everybody, it's Carter, and welcome to this episode of Making It Up, the show where I get to sit down and chat with other writers and have a blast doing so. I call it Making It Up mostly because of how we make up a story at the end, but also because I don't really research. Somebody gets booked on the show, and I'll look at their bio a little bit. Maybe I already know them, but I just want to talk to them, and yeah, my questions are always a result of what they tell me. So it's just all about having a conversation and kind of exploring their journey as a writer. Today on the show, I had Samuel Octavius, which is a fantastic name, right? So Sam. I got to know at Thriller Fest, like a lot of other authors. I got to know him at Thriller Fest. He's not yet published, but he writes techno military thrillers, and I kind of gravitated to him at Thriller Fest because I was just realizing like this is somebody who really knows the way to do it. Right? Writing is not just about sitting down and putting words on a page. Obviously, that's a huge part of it, and that's what has to happen. But it's also about networking. It's about getting to know your peers. It's about understanding the industry and navigating within that industry and putting yourself out there. And Sam starts volunteering at Thriller Fest, gets really heavily involved, starts to get to know a lot of people, and that's been a tremendous boost for him. So I was interested in talking to him because I wanted to kind of hear how his journey was, not only with writing, but with like learning how to be a professional writer, not just a writer, but learning the industry. And he's got a fascinating background in the military. He was in the Marines for quite some time, stationed overseas for quite some time, and has used a lot of those experiences to fuel his fiction, but he also has other aspects of his life that he uses in his fiction as well. So really, really interesting guy, great personality. He's got a great presence. So I really enjoyed talking to him, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this. This is my conversation with Samuel Octavius. Hey, buddy.
Hey, how's it going, Carter?
Good to see man. You. You as well. Good to see you. You still recovering from Thriller Fest?
Oh my God, yeah. It is. It's a summer long recovery after a conference like that. So
you did a lot of work.
Yeah, it was a busy time,
which is awesome.
It was good.
Yeah, man. It was. I tell you, like 5 straight nights of cocktail parties, and somehow I didn't get COVID. It's it's a miracle.
It is.
It's been all around me for whatever for 2.5 years, and I still haven't gotten it. But I think it's going to come at a very inopportune time. I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Have you stayed healthy more or less?
I've been lucky enough. I've gotten it, and lucky enough had mild cases.
Yeah, that's good.
Vaxxed and boosted, so it's
a
little easier to deal with. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and now it's at the point where it's like it really isn't a big deal, but it still screws up everything because, like, if you're going to go to a conference, Thriller Fest is a good example. If you had a cold, you'd probably still go, but with COVID, you're like, that's just not responsible. But then it blows up all of your plans. So now it's just a pain in the ass more than anything.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I'm grateful we got to a point where it's more of an annoyance, right? Like
100%. Yep. No, I agree. Sometimes I have problems with reflecting on gratitude. So thank you for that reminder.
Oh, man.
So where are you? Where do you live?
So I live in Northern Virginia, right? Like I'm right outside of Quantico, just south of DC.
Okay. So have you? And we're going to kind of go backwards in time, but is where you live now, in relationship to obviously to the military, your military service, or are you from that area?
No, this is my last duty station that I was stationed. I was stationed in this area.
Okay.
And the family liked it so much. It was all right. We're staying here. And since I drug my wife around 7 different moves during our marriage,
Yeah, I'm sure she's happy for, just kind of that stability of at least the location,
yeah, she was very clear. She's like, I don't want to move again. I
Yeah.
think we're
You've done your service, I've done my service.
pretty much.
So where did you grow up?
Uh, I grew up in Alabama until I was about 8, 9, and I moved up north to Gary, Indiana, right outside Chicago.
Okay. What were your parents doing at the time? What kind of work were they doing?
My dad worked at the steel mill in Gary, and my mother was a teacher. She's an English teacher.
Okay. And that was the reason for the move, was his work at the steel mill?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we moved, they end up moving around the time me and my brother graduated down to Indianapolis.
Okay.
That area, and what my mom kept teaching. Love that area. But I enlisted from Gary. I enlisted in that area, and we was out in Maryville when we moved, and I joined the Marines from there.
Okay.
And from that point, it's a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, I'm sure. So I'm just curious about kind of growing up in Gary, and then, going through high school, and then your mom's an English teacher. Was that an influence on you? I'm always curious about kind of that inflection point of, like, where did the creativity come from? Where, was there a love of books?
Yeah, I think it kind of did. I mean, we had a big playful family. We were all thematic in nature. So my mom as a teacher kind of really wanted us to get into public speaking. So my brother he and I were always in talent shows, and
oh wow,
doing stuff like that. We got into speech and debate in high school to run the debate team, which was funny because it actually started because we were actually, I could actually back it up before high school, man, because I was at a visual and performing arts school through my middle school year, from like 6th grade to from 5th grade to 9th grade. And I was a drama major. I loved plays, Huckleberry Finn and The Emperor's New Clothes. I enjoyed that.
Sure.
But then once we got into high school, me and my brother and I played basketball. We played baseball. And I think it was I want to say it might have been our English teacher, but he might taught social studies. We go back and forth exactly what did he teach.
Right.
We absolutely loved him. He was
right. That was a strong connection for you, was that teacher.
That teacher, yeah, Mr. Zorful. He was an absolutely amazing teacher, and he kind of reached out and said, "Hey, you guys should join the speech and debate team." And my brother immediately wanted to join the debate team because he felt like this could be a wonderful opportunity for him to argue with everybody.
and learn how to get better at it.
He was like, "This is where I'm gonna get it." So sure enough, he went out tryouts. Our teacher had no intentions on him or I or either one of us doing anything with debate. He moved into the speech side of the house, and my brother went the first day and came back and said he had a good time and he wanted me to come back. So the following weekend, we went out and checked him out. Next thing we know, we're on the speech team, performing our very first speech using British accents.
Oh my goodness. How was your accent?
At the time, it was good. It's absolutely horrible now. I was not, that's something you have to practice to get good at.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was fun. I loved it. But, a lot of that I left behind once I joined the service and, moved on.
But what a stepping stone. I mean, when you think about most high school kids, right, the idea of any kind of public speaking is, horrifying. It certainly was for me. I hated it. And later in my life, I completely embraced it. But seeing the ramifications of embracing it, it does so much for all of parts of your life, right? It instills such confidence. And to have that as a teenager, did you have a sense of that, like, you are more outspoken, you are more confident because you went through all of that, or were you just always kind of naturally that way anyway?
I think it helped. I think it helped a lot because, you know, I got a chance to perform a little bit in middle school doing those plays.
Right.
But that's with a cast. That's with scripted words.
Right. It's not all on you. Right.
It's not all on you. And then you can completely lose the audience because of lights. So you can't see the audience. The only thing you see is the lights and the other people that you're up there with. So those performances, you kind of were alone anyway. Speech was different. Speech was, yes, it's very, it's memorized words, but you can see every last person sitting there looking at you, their facial expressions, how they respond to, your cadence, and it's a competition. You're actually competing against other, speaking teams. So it helped out a lot. I mean, it definitely got prepped. So it was a good experience.
Yeah, for sure. And it is performing, right? It is, there's a beauty, and this very much translates to being a writer, because there are opportunities where you are out there in front of people, and if you can kind of command their attention, which a lot of writers can't, because a lot of writers are introverts. It really rounds out a career, because you think you can just write and that's it, but there's so many more aspects of putting yourself out there that's important, and having those tools is critical. So what was the decision making process about enlisting?
Yeah, it was basically time to make a change. My brother and I we were contemplating going to school for theater, University of Indianapolis at the time, and that was kind of what we wanted to do. The alumni had lost funding, so our scholarships, didn't kind of come through for that year.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, hey, if you sit out a year and come back next year, we will, we should have everything kind of squared away. So it was, take a year off if we really want to go to that school for that program and that team, or go to another school. And it was just kind of up in there. And after frustration, it's like, I'm joining the Marines. that was kind of
so just you, not your brother.
It was just me up until the day I actually went to the recruiter's office. I convinced him to go with me to drive me there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he tells the story much better than I do.
Did you punk your brother into enlisting in the service?
That's exactly how he tells the story.
That's pretty extreme.
Every family reunion, he tells everybody that it wasn't until like the 8th day when anyone asked him a question, and the first words that came out his mouth after 8 days is, "I'm not supposed to be here." Like, I'm not. Misunderstanding.
Are you guys twins? Are you the same age?
No, we're same age. Half brother. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
And he, oh my God, it's a funny story. And so he got injured though, and he ended up discharging after school, and he went on and had a successful career other directions. But it's always been the funny story of, like, he was in boot camp, and it took like after a week before he had a chance to tell anybody, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was received well. Well, you're not going anywhere. Whether you're supposed to be here or not, doesn't matter.
It was funny in the moment. I mean, of course, our drill instructors didn't find it funny, but I would say our platoon thought it was hilarious because he was so sincere and everybody else is terrified. It's the first week. It's like, right, everybody's in that space like, I'm not supposed to be here. And he just so happened to be the one kid who voiced it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's interesting to me that, I always think about like life choices and what if this had happened or what if that had happened. And just the idea that year there wasn't the funding for the scholarship. Yeah. Had there been, who knows, you might have just absolutely beelined it to that school and never enlisted. But so, and then tell me a little bit about, your time in the service, because I know you served overseas, right?
Yeah, I've enjoyed my career. It was a good Marine Corps career. So I enlisted in '97. Right? Like, so this is pre 9/11.
Oh wow, yeah.
as an old man, right? I had a good time. I started out in radio communications. I was a comm guy with tactical radios. Had a blast, and got lucky enough to end up a part of the Marine Corps martial arts program. So
okay.
I was one of the early teams of putting together that program for the Marines, and I got a chance to work with some of the most badass guys you can work with.
I'm sure.
It was a really good time, and that's where I was at when the towers fell and the Pentagon was hit. So we were out training platoon of lieutenants, and like we knew right then, like the world has changed. And like for the instructors, those guys got orders out, and a year later, I got orders out, but I did a lateral move out of communications into military intel.
Mm.
I did that, went to school, finished school, slingshot, and that was my first run into Iraq was between 03, 04, 04, 05. And then I back to back all the way to 2009.
Wow.
And then slingshot to Afghanistan in 2010. And then I came back.
Okay.
That was like the calm down cycle of coming off the deployment cycle at that point. And then
which must have been difficult. Just kind of the reintegration, right? Like I've heard that as well. Like I had a really good friend who was a SEAL, and he'd come home and he's like, I don't know how, nobody here understands what I see. And I don't know how to sit with that. And so that was several years for you over there. So that must have been an adjustment period coming back.
Yeah. I think, I've talked about the adjustment a couple of times in different groups and, different engagements with a bunch of vets. One of the things that we all kind of agreed was a theme of like your ability to normalize the activity and the routine to where that felt more real, and coming home felt like the fake world. It wasn't the real world.
Right.
Like over there, because it's like it's a constant state. You don't really have distractions. You just go. And you come home and there's like you got to pick up groceries and drive to the mall, and there's movies to watch, and you can eat out at multiple restaurants. And
right.
It's a super comfy bed, and you can wake up late if you want to, and sleep in at different times, and all the things that are associated to life is not that, right? Like you literally focused on your shift. If you had a long one or a late one, you slept, you showered, you ate, you went back to work, and you stayed focused, and that cycle just kind of kept running. And if you were on a movement to where your cycle was outside the wire, right? Like you had to stay focused on that particular mission until you came back. So it was like you locked in, and then you decompress once you come back, and then you went right back out the gate, locked in, decompress when you come back. So all of that just kind of cycled into, that's how you processed deployment for the most part.
Yeah. And you're so, like you said, you're so focused. You have a, kind of a singular focus. And in a way, you're able to shed your responsibility of all the other things you have to think about, like when you're here now, like all the responsibilities, all the millions of decisions, that's kind of stripped away from you, which is probably, so that's another, I would think, a big change of all of a sudden you've got all this other shit you got to deal with.
Yeah.
Like, not necessarily life or death shit, but like, decisions that have to be constantly made that you're not necessarily as used to making that often.
Yeah. And getting over to the part of our transition was like this, dealing with real world sense of urgency. That's like that's your first transition period of where everyone else in their everyday lives do not have a life and death sense of urgency. So there's no reason to be screaming at the top of your lungs at the Walmart cashier because she's taking an extra 7 change. Like it's perfectly okay.
Yeah. I mean, it is a massive perspective shift.
It is.
I would think.
Yeah.
Wow. So where did in all of this and in all of your upbringing, where did this desire or passion for storytelling come about?
Yeah, I think I've always loved stories. And I think that was one of the things that probably carried over from childhood and, doing stuff in the speech and debate and, reading books. But I will say that drive, that really, really deep hunger came on a deployment. It was would say my 14-month stint, just because it was had a little R&R in between, so I got a chance to extend that a little longer. The time out there, there's some high times and there's some downtime. There's busy, and then there's a lull of absolutely nothing going on. And I would always grab a book to read. Grab a book. We would get care packages of books all the time. So
Sure.
Kaplan had them, NWR had them, and CSS had them. Sometime you'd find a unit sergeant major somewhere. A first sergeant had a box of books. Everybody had books. You just had to go look for them. And I would collect books and read. And one day I was telling a buddy of mine, I think it was more of like, I was reading a lot of contemporary stories and some nonfiction work that was happening, about the Iraq War, about OIF. And I felt like one of the things that were missing were like the stories of the Marines, or the stories of the soldiers, or some of the airmen out there. Like their personal stories was missing from the narrative of all this contemporary literature. Like, who's telling this story? And I'm just jumping up and down, right. And a buddy said, "Why don't you write something?" And it's that moment I remember the most, because it was like that small thread just ding. Light came on, and I realized that was a hunger I had, like a desire I had. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And like soon as those words came out, the light came on, and it hadn't went off yet.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. I'm always really curious about that. What you were activated, basically. That those words activated something that was already there. And I'm convinced that if you are kind of a writer at heart, that will eventually burrow its way out through your skin at some point. It will, no matter what path you take, that's going to happen. But there are a lot of people. This happened to me the other night. Guy comes up to me. He's like, "Oh, I've always wanted to write. I've got this great story," and you could kind of tell like it was the idea for the story that was there, but not the passion for the writing of the story. And those are two totally different things, right?
Very different things.
Because once you start writing, it sucks. It's hard, and it's like. But if you start to kind of embrace the words and the rhythm and learn and the learning of it all, it's beautiful. But there's a lot of people out there who just happen to have an idea because something that happened to them, but I don't think they're storytellers. So that activated you. How did you actually begin?
Yeah, that started it. I went on and wrote an outline of my story in a journal during that deployment. And then when I came home, I wrote the first draft of the first novel.
How was that experience? Because if you're like me, I had zero background.
Oh yeah, I had none. I had zero.
So you're like, okay, I guess this is enough for a chapter. I don't know.
Yeah. This was zero. What I discovered once I finished, and I felt very proud, like I finished the book.
Yeah.
I learned very quickly I knew absolutely nothing about story writing, like nothing. I had no foundational knowledge on any of that. But it did draw me to like, okay, now I need to seek out people who write books. I need to find the space, the community that exists. That's kind of what brought me into ITW.
And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons I was really interested in talking to you, because I think a lot of people can learn from that experience, because I think a decent amount of people get to the point where I wrote that first draft, and now what? And so many people shut down right then, or they send it to a few agents and nothing happens. They're done. Yeah. It seems that you've learned very early on, pre-publication, like, oh, network isn't important. All these different aspects, not just the writing, is important, because it absolutely is.
Yeah. It is critical for the success of any type of career, having a good, solid network, and then just having people to kind of come to help. I shared that first version with a few friends, and your family and your loved ones and your friends, they'll, oh, that was good, man. Good, you got through some words. And then you'll have that one super honest friend that's really, really close to you, like, hey, man, don't show anybody else this thing, okay?
Do not self-publish this.
Do not self-publish this. Do not show. So, I found Thriller Fest, and that was probably one of the biggest blessings, because I got to get a deep understanding of like writing craft. Is a very, very patient, laborious. It's a journey. It's a deep, deep, deep journey. So, I found all the books, the popular books that were highly recommended to kind of get started. And I jumped into my own journey of learning how to write a story. And then I went through the process of rewriting it based on the things I learned from a few conferences and stuff I read out of the book. Finished the second rewrite, and I was like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good. And then that's when I got into the journey of dealing with an editor. I knew someone here who just so happened to freelance as a fiction editor, and she did mostly nonfiction, but she did some work. And she helped me work through that first novel. And it was a fun journey, because one of the things I learned, after going through with her, is there are different types of writing, right? Like there's fiction writing, there's nonfiction writing, and there's storytelling. And, depending on what genre you're in, very specific, like you're writing for, technical writing is not written for entertainment, it's written for information.
Right.
So like I'm absorbing all these technical documents, and certain portions of my novel was just hyper technical, to the point to where I didn't even have characters in certain scenes. It was just the things.
Right.
It was just the things, right? So we worked on that, and then I went back to the conference and started the journey, and it was good.
Yeah. It is pretty interesting, because, but all that stuff that you do outside of writing, is helpful, but it's not going to get your book sold. You still have to have a good book, right? And even if you have a great book, the odds aren't great. But I was like, I went to Thriller Fest before I was published, and I'd sit in craft fests and stuff. I'm like, holy shit, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can, in my opinion, there's only so much you can absorb, because you might hear 1,000 different ways to structure a book.
Yep.
And I think eventually you just have to write, and your voice tends to come out after time, and then there will be those people who will serve as guardrails and kind of say, it's too much this or it's too much that. And even that, you have to learn who to listen to, right? Sure. And critique groups are important too, but it's all very humbling.
Extremely humbling. I tell people all the time that writing is a contact sport. It is. Yes, you spend a lot of time behind your screen, your keyboard, talking to your imaginary characters and arguing with them about what needs to be on a scene. But it's still a contact sport, because sometimes the words aren't there, right? Like you will pound away 250 words a day, or 750 if you get good, or just crack out 1,000 if you're feeling like really, really strong that day. You come back the next day and you read it, and it's like, this is all trash. I don't know what this was.
Right. But you have to even get to that point, because it's so easy to look and be like, it's good enough, even though deep down you're like, I know it's not, but I'm feeling lazy, and that can fly with like other jobs, but if you're being true to yourself, it's very, you really have to admit to yourself, like, this is not where I want it to be. And even when it gets to where you want to be, it still might not be good enough, but you have to at least get it to the point where you feel, I left it all out here. Yeah. This represents to me my best. And that doesn't mean it's good. It just means I really gave it a shot.
I gave it a shot. Yeah.
So, but then with ITW and Thriller Fest, you got involved. You started volunteering. What was that like? Who did you reach out to? Like, what was the motivation behind that?
Yeah, I love Thriller Fest so much. I reached out to the team that was there. I knew Kimberly. She was a mentor of mine, and I asked her if I could volunteer, and immediately joined the security team. And I helped with security, and I helped with the different events, and I did that for since 2013. I think since 2013, that was my role. When I went to the conference, I would join a security team and escort VIPs around, and kind of help people move between the conference and stuff like that. And I would say COVID year, when we went virtual, we had to do a virtual year, and I have a technical background, so it was, hey, we're getting ready to try to do a virtual Thriller Fest. You think you can help out? I was like, yeah, man.
Which is no small undertaking.
Not at all. Not at all. Not even a little bit. I was excited to do it that first year, 2020, to do the virtual jump, and we just jumped all the way in. Yeah, I joined the staff helping with Pitch Fest, and putting Pitch Fest together in of itself was an undertaking, just because if you understand how, when you see the real live events to where we organize all the agents up, we have their bios written up, and then everyone kind of comes in, and it's like first come, first serve, establish the line, and then we kind of move people around. It is a self-containing environment. Mm-hmm. It set up that way. In a virtual space, it is very hard to duplicate that with 1,000 Zoom links.
Right. Yeah. Right. Oh.
Yeah. So we had to try to organize that as best we could.
Yeah.
Recreate that type of magic. So.
And have you seen, like, just from all of your networking and now how many people have you seen benefits from that, and beyond just learning?
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. It was a blessing to get in, to be a part of the group, and the friendships I've made, the connections I've had an opportunity to part of the conference, and then tangentially, second degree, third degree, right? Like the collateral connections you make just being a part of another writing group has been beneficial beyond just learning, because you get an opportunity to have mentors who have published multiple books, right? Like they're on book 26, right? At this point.
Right. Totally.
And a lot of times, some of those writers, like the second thing, they've been pounding that process for so long. The second journey is to live it vicariously through another. And that has been a super fascinating experience, to see the excitement and energy from super established writers that are paying it forward to just, relive the journey of watching someone start theirs. And
and it's such an interesting industry, because it's, in my opinion, at least the genre of thrillers and mystery, like the writers that I've met and become friends with, the greatest group of people. And there's nobody out there that I can see hoping somebody else's fails. They want, because there's no reason to compete. It's not like, if you buy this person's book, you're not going to buy mine because you were out of money. It really, like, everyone supports each other, and it is pretty amazing to see. When you ask somebody to blurb your book, like, that's a huge deal. That's like a big commitment, and people do it all the time. It's a really generous community.
It is very generous. I'm super grateful. One of the I wish I could attribute this, because I don't remember which writer said it. I was sitting in his lecture, and I could picture his face, but I can't think of him. One of the things I remember him saying was, this is an industry that it makes so much sense for us to support one another, because the more people who are reading books, the more people who are buying books.
Yep.
Benefits everybody. It's like these are fewer people playing video games, right? Or plugged in with another hobby, when they take the time to download that ebook and read your pages, or
you're competing against all forms of anything that gets in front of your eyes.
Yes, they're not like dubbing down the YouTube paradise, right?
Right.
Book, yeah.
So, in terms of your writing, where are you at with that book? And then is your primary interest in novels, in military novels?
Oh yeah, this is good. Yeah, so the first book was my lesson about industry, right? Like I put that on the shelf. It didn't go anywhere, but
I had 3 of those, by the way.
Did you really?
My first 3 didn't sell.
But I keep it. Like I look at it, and it's a reminder. Like you did that.
Yep,
That was
totally.
That's how you learn. And I'm finishing through the second one. I finished up the last rewrite and burning through some of the last minute edits now. It's a techno thriller. It's not quite military fiction. You know, one of the things I wanted to get out was like I didn't want to drop just straight military fiction stereotypes. What I wanted to do was kind of write in an expansive space to kind of give me some creative room,
right,
to kind of move around. And this has been fun. It's you know I've still got to leverage my Marine Corps background, so all my characters are Marines for the most part.
Right.
But it has been a good, productive journey for me. Going through this one.
And I think with techno thrillers too, there's a sensitivity about just the how well does that age, right? Mm-hmm. Like you write something now, and if it gets published 5 years from now, the technology's probably vastly changed. So you probably have to keep on top of that as well.
It is hard to. I've learned a valuable lesson with writing this book since I've had to rewrite it. Is I can't pinpoint technology. Like technology is dangerous just because it changes so fast.
Right.
But what I can hold on to is the science. If I hold on to the science doesn't change as fast. It evolves, it learns, but I can hold the science in the story a lot longer than I can hold the specific technology. Like I give you an example. If I'm talking about energy and I go very specific and start talking about like D-cell batteries, like, all right, D-cell batteries is probably a bad example since they stay around for a while. But if I am pinpointing, the battery life of an iPhone, version 1, and I get really, really technical in that space, and my character is obsessing over this, it makes more sense for me that like I don't have to rewrite that mechanic if I just focus on why he cares about that particular battery and cell.
Right.
Stay away from the version of that particular device.
Well, yeah, and then you're making it more about character anyway, which is probably for the best. I mean, you look at Clancy writing 20 pages on the nanosecond of a nuclear bomb detonation.
Yeah,
it's a little bit like I want to know what the characters are thinking.
yeah.
So, yes. So that makes sense, and I think it's worth pointing out. Something you said that we could easily let pass over, but I think it's worth kind of underscoring it is you acknowledged this first book. This was my kind of my practice book, and your ability to move on from that is tremendous, because I think that also defines whether or not you're a writer, a true writer or not, is your ability to let go. And because this is a journey for you, this isn't like I wrote this one book and it's going to get published, come hell or high water. Like, this book was not ready to be published, but I've got a lot more in me. And I've always kind of felt like that too. It's like, if something has to be orphaned, then it's not the only thing I know how to write, or the only thing I want to write. Yeah. So I hope you can appreciate that's a huge thing to just let a book go. And a lot of people can. And I know people who have self-published and like, dude, it's not ready to be published. And now that's out there, and that can be done. And there's nothing wrong with self-publishing, but I think you have to be, acknowledging the fact whether something's ready for the wild or not,
Yeah. That has been also my journey on my second novel too. When I first finished it, it was around 2020. It was COVID year when everybody was home, and I finished it and was like clapping myself on the back. All things were done, and I let it sit and marinate a little bit, and then picked it up a month later, read it.
Yeah,
I knew then, and luckily enough, it was just perfect timing to kind of go back, rework some of the characters. I was really fascinated with the technology I was playing with. My book is a play on information, right? Like, so I'm really getting after, how our reality is formed by the information which we absorb. And I got really caught up into mis and disinformation, the infodemic space, and less on the character's experience of that environment. So that second rewrite was, okay, let me form these characters, let me drop them into this narrative, and now let me see how they interact with that. So that was a good experience. And I put it to like this. I am happy with this work. But if for any reason, God help me, like it doesn't happen, but if any reason this ends up being a book I have to like hold on to and start another one, like I've learned so much from that one that's so far, removed from the first one. Like, so the journey continues for me.
Yeah, I mean, your 10th book only exists because of the 9 before it, right? I feel like every time I write something, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm more in a groove now, or I feel like I want to explore this space. And I think what you said is important to also underscore, like, because you lose perspective, right? You can go back, and probably that month that you took off from looking at it was hugely helpful. And that's a hard thing for me to do, is to give it too much time or any time. But to go back and recognize and identify without being told, oh, there needs to be more character issues here rather than the technology. That's a difficult thing to do. That's, you get caught up like this sounds good, but you're not seeing the forest for the trees sometimes. So that's great that you had that perspective.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. This was I would lie to say it was like an easy acceptance. It was more of me nudging around. I can fix it. I can bolt a character on.
Yeah.
I went through the bolting character on experience, and that it didn't feel natural to me. Right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, and that's sometimes where it's really helpful to have other perspectives come in, right? When you have other people that you trust and who can be agnostic about the work, really take an honest look at it. That's where, like, for me, like, agent and editors come in and they say, like, this is one way to one thing or the other. I'm like, I trust these people, and then it might be 4 months of work to fix it, but if you're passionate about it, I'm at a place right now where one of my books is like, I'm not sure if it's going to get published or not, because it's just really different, and I'm just trying to go through that acceptance of, like, if it doesn't, then yeah, I've gotten something else. So, but it's a different thing for me, so it's tough.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, man, we're going to wrap up. Before we do, we're going to do a little storytelling. This is the fun part. So,
okay.
So I have 3 books that I chose from my bookshelf. I'm going to have you pick out one of these books, and then we're going to pick a random sentence from a random page, and I'm going to read that sentence.
Okay.
And then that's the first sentence of a quick flash fiction story we're going to tell. So you give me the next couple sentences, then I'll do a couple just at a time, and then after a couple minutes, I'll call it quits. But we'll see where it goes. But I chose 3. These are from my signed piles, so 3 signed thrillers.
Okay.
Got Harlan Coben's 6 Years. David Bell's Kill All Your Darlings.
Oh yeah.
And Liv Constantine's The Last Mrs. Parrish.
Oh yeah, The Last Mrs. Parrish. That's the one.
That's the one. All right, on. So pick a. Lynn will be happy. Pick a page between 1 and 400.
1 and 400. 259.
Okay. And then give me a sentence between 1 and 10.
6.
Okay. All right. This is very basic. So we can do whatever we want with this, but it's very easy. All right. I felt my stomach tighten.
And I couldn't believe he just walked into the room wearing someone else's sweater.
He didn't even look at me, but I could smell him as well, and he didn't smell like he normally does. He walked past me and into the closet, where he just casually discarded the sweater along with the rest of his clothes. Came back into the room, naked.
I looked down at the cup of tea I was drinking, picked it up, I sipped it without making eye contact with him. I put the tea back down on the table sitting next to me before I walked out of the room.
For a second, I contemplated throwing the tea right on him, wanting to know how much that would hurt his naked form. But instead, I walked out, down the stairs, and I was in the kitchen and thinking about grabbing my car keys, just leaving altogether, when I looked down and saw the scissors sitting there on the countertop. They seemed to gleam.
I picked up those scissors. I stared at those scissors. I remember cutting wrapping paper at Christmas with the kids using those scissors. But I turned around and walked right back up the stairs into the bedroom where he stood, still standing naked.
Okay, we're going to call it there because I love your little detail about the wrapping paper. That was fantastic. And you leave him hanging because, you think she's going to kill him, but who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? That was awesome, man. Good job.
That's fun, man.
It always turns very dark very quickly.
It does. A bunch of thriller writers? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've even had like nonfiction writers and journalists where all of a sudden like someone's just dead on the floor. All right, I guess we're doing that now.
I guess that's what's happening. Oh my God, this is awesome, Carl.
Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and you're a fascinating guy, and I'm glad I got to know you a little bit better, and I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. This is absolutely amazing. So if there's any other time I can come just make it up with you, like let me know, man. I'm
100%. Yeah, that's awesome. I'd appreciate that. All right, Sam, enjoy your day, buddy.
You too, brother.
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Bye. So there you go. That was my conversation with Samuel Octavius. He was great, right? I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. Yeah, hopefully we'll. I don't know if he's going to BoucherCon or not, but hopefully I'll see him at the next conference. So if you want to find out more about him, you can just go to samueloctavius.com. I recommend you do so. And if you want to know more about me or subscribe to my newsletter or check out events I'm going to be at upcoming, just go to carterwilson.com. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed that. I appreciate you watching and or listening. More episodes coming out soon, but in the meantime, take care.